This is the abbot of Shaolin Temple, Shi Yongxin, who's less about enlightenment, more about endorsements. Nicknamed the CEO monk, he runs Shaolin Temple like it's a Hollywood-branded product and a tourist trap destination. Shaolin Temple is probably the most famous Chinese temple because we've seen it worldwide for the kung fu influence that it has provided to Hollywood and also to Hong Kong action films, as well as it might be China's most successful soft power export. And Shi was recently arrested for embezzling temple funds and violating Buddhist precepts, and the temple itself accused him of sexual misconducts as well. Over the years, Shi allegedly had 51 affair partners, multiple secret children, and a net worth of 3 billion yuan, which is approximately 435 million USD. In one instance, he accepted a custom Buddhist robe priced at 160,000 yuan, or about, I think the conversion is 23,000 USD. He also cruised around in a gifted 1 million yuan Volkswagen Touareg, which is about 140,000 USD. Essentially, he turned Shaolin Temple into a money-making machine, complete with tourism packages, brand deals, and even incense fees. In 2001, he demolished nearby villages just so that he can appeal to UNESCO to make Shaolin Temple a World Heritage Site. To impress the UNESCO, nothing a little bit of forced demolition can't solve the problem, right? In May this year, around the time that Xi Jinping visited Luoyang, which is another city in the same province where Shaolin Temple is situated, the authorities had sent in a team residing inside the temple to start the investigation. But earlier this year, he had already been placed under house arrest and restricted his movements because of these allegations. It's not about the money, not about the car or the robe, or about the mistresses or 51 of them, but it's about something else. This wasn't about the sins, it was about the powers. Before his arrest, he was China's most powerful bald-headed CEO, just not a monk. Does a monk get to go invest in Australia for a new temple? Does a monk get to sit in on lectures and reports at China's Aerospace Academy? How about teach and preach about climate change at COP29? Like, pick a niche. Now you might think that, well, Xi Jinping maybe hated this guy so much for flaunting his wealth, considering he's doing anti-corruption, right? Actually, the opposite happened. When all these accusations and allegations were leveled against Shi Yongxin, this was even before Xi Jinping was even in power. Even back then, Shi walked free. Why? Well, the answer is very simple, because someone powerful had his back. In 2015, at the height of Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign, Shi was publicly accused of having affairs, having all these lavish private life material possessions, as well as having corruption issues. At the time, the BBC interviewed him and asked him these questions. He, of course, dodged it like a true Shaolin warrior would, dodging punches. He didn't answer any of the questions, or he simply said these were false allegations. And that was actually it. In 2015, these were discoveries that eventually led to nowhere. Or even if they did go into investigations, it was that there was a proper explanation and reasoning for it. Essentially, they ignored it for over a decade, which makes this 2025 arrest so insanely weird, because when someone as untouchable as he was in 2015 to suddenly fall now, well, the shield behind him has been shattered. Someone above has lost power. It's plain and simple. So here's some more of the ridiculous stuff, right? So back in 2011, there was a claim that Xi was trying to hire a prostitute and he was arrested during the process. And the temple's defense was that he was providing a consecration service to this woman who has lost her footing. In other words, the abbot was providing consecration for this poor girl, blessing her, and he wasn't charging for her for any of the services. Yeah, he was blessing an escort. Nothing else, no attachments. That same year, he was accused of owning properties in both the United States and also in Germany, and also having fathered secret children with different girls overseas, some as young as college students and others obviously different women, and they all live a very lavish lifestyle in mansions across the ocean from China. And obviously none of this led to anywhere. Some of these alleged children of his basically were apparently kids of their younger brother, of his younger brother, or somebody else, definitely not him, because he is the abbot. It was so crazy because Shaolin Temple at the time offered cash rewards for anyone who could find evidence to prove the allegations were true. Yeah, they were trying to basically put the burden of proof on the public, not on the monk who drives a luxury SUV. So none of this stuck for over a decade, and then suddenly today it changed. Because obviously Xi wasn't just a monk, he was a political chess piece that somebody saw was very important. So in China, monks and nuns are called 出家人, or people who have renounced their worldly lives. It literally translates to walked out of your home people. And so these people, they shave their heads, they adopt a temple name, they live by the rules of, say, no intimacy, no worldly material possession or attachments. Some of them, back in the days, actually a lot of them, when they become a monk, they even sever ties with their family completely. Like they would not recognize their family, even if the parents went to the temple and try to see them, right? They will all refer to them as shiju. And so in that sense, it's very different than the monks today who drive Bentleys, Mercedes, Ferraris, rather than walking on along their own path for cultivation. So Shaolin specifically is a victim of this because people tend to forget, like, I mean, even I forget that Shaolin Temple is an actual Buddhist temple. It's not a martial arts institution, right? The class of martial artists that study or that had the Shaolin Kung Fu as this method of martial art used it for physical exercise or for defense of the temple, right? But obviously, that's been overshadowed by the Kung Fu movies, the merchandising, etc. I just find it funny because, you know, this abbot is doing business in the name of Buddha, and he's essentially selling a fake persona to buy influence, right? Couldn't be me. I only recommend the best products, which is why I really recommend this product for you today. So this is as real as it gets. It is a Korean product called Red Sea Cucumber Gel. It comes in these individual little packets. They taste like blueberry gels, like sour blueberry gel. And these are hand harvested on Jeju Island in South Korea by these female divers called hanyons. And what this product does is it contains, unlike the regular, you know, not Red Sea cucumbers, this product contains a lot of saponin and collagen, which is great for recovery, fights against inflammation a lot, right? So that's what it's good at doing. So it's great for boosting your overall health, fight against aging, and also it's good to improve these chronic conditions that you might have. So one of the reviews recently is from a teacher, retired teacher. She suffered from problematic sleep. So she used to wake up a lot, and she also had like these chronic pain in her backs. So after taking this product for a few weeks, she realized that, oh, look, now I can sleep well, and also I don't get as much pain in my back. So this is really great if you're somebody who suffers from these chronic, maybe say a knee pain or leg pain, or something that bothers you a lot. This is a very natural product to fight against that. Use code David to get 15% off extra on the website, so click the link in the description and get yours today. So that's the point. Shi essentially has turned religion into product, and he isn't seeking nirvana. He's essentially seeking commercial success. And so to do that in China, you need to work with the CCP. That's what he's done. Before, he also held the role of representative in the National People's Congress. He was the chairman of Henan's Buddhist Association. He was also the vice chair of the national one. And then a commercial monk, he's fully embedded into the system. Now, next time the CCP or its shells boast about religious freedom in China or how there's so many temples and you can go and do worships, yeah, that's the stuff that they regulate. That's not real religion. Like, this is the stuff that they have these kind of monks or abbots that oversee them. They're a commercial aspect, an activity separate from the religious one, right? So if you really wanted to worship the Buddha like as a religion, yeah, that's not allowed in China. But if you want to perform some ancestral rites or to put some incense into worshiping a temple statue, yeah, that's okay. Now, despite the CCP destroying religion in China, the Chinese people still holds a very high regard in terms of the spiritual aspects, right? And especially given the history and its culture integrating with Buddhism and Taoism, a lot of the values people still commonly know, even exist in a lot of writings as well. One of them is what happens when a monk or somebody who does spiritual cultivation violates some of the rules, right? Such as, no intimacy is a big one, or maybe eating meat or something like that, those rules, right? The rule of Buddhism is very simple, right? It's essentially a total detachment from every worldly desire. No affairs, no children, no material possessions, and none of that stuff, right? In China, if you violate some of these, you're called that you have a lack of clarity in your six senses. The six senses being your typical five: your smell, your seeing, your sight, your touch, your ears, and your mouth, right? So these are the five, plus your mind, that's your sixth sense. So if you have a lot of attachments in these areas, such as touch or seeing or thinking, that means you lack the clarity in your six senses. So Shi having a lot of money, a lot of affairs, a lot of kids, it just means he's not clear in his six senses, right? But this is honestly, like I mentioned, it's to be expected because after the Great Cultural Revolution, a lot of the real monks, they were wiped out. They were arrested, they were forced to recant their beliefs. So after that, these smaller, younger monks essentially became the abbots. So they know nothing about running a temple like a religious institution. The next generation grew up in a spiritual vacuum. They inherited empty temples, and faith was essentially replaced by form and, image over meaning, I guess. Now, finally, the question, who actually protected Xi? So here's a simple image to illustrate this. If I had to put it into a graph, it goes like, before 2015, somebody named Li Changchun. After 2015, Xi Jinping. And in 2025, no one. And that's why he fell. Who was Li Changchun? Well, he was a top propaganda official and party secretary of Henan, but in 2012 he retired. So Henan, remember, is the home province of Shaolin Temple. And actually, he called Shi his old friend. The abbot was his old friend. And this relationship between the abbot and Li Changchun is the only public one that we know, or as it at least has been talked about, between a high-level CCP official and a commercial or private sector person. Now, Li Changchun was part of the Zhang Zemin faction. And if we have touched a little bit of this part of history in the 2010s, you would know that Xi Jinping was in this heavy power fight against Zhang's faction influence after he gained power in 2013. So at the height of this anti-corruption campaign from Xi Jinping in 2015, somebody that is shielded by a factional member of Zhang Zemin, Li Changchun that should, or at least we would expect it to be a big target for, trying to defeat their influence, right? Such as this abbot was. Because in 2015, Xi Jinping was not friendly with the Zhang faction at all. And yet in 2015, these allegations and accusations leveled against the abbot, they were left untouched, or at least as we thought. As it turns out, as I'm reading through some of the old stuff, or the lingering bits that you can find, what it seems to happen, or at least what I think happened, was that Xi Jinping was actually the one who brought out those allegations in an attempt to use that as a piece of leverage against Li Changchun. Now, obviously, Li being a member of the Zhang faction, it seemed like 2015 was a turning point of who owned this abbot. Remember, the Zhang faction was also one that did a lot of terrible things, like the forced organ harvesting against Falun Gong practitioners and others. And so religion was, or at least Buddhist religion, is a big aspect of the CCP's control, much like how they control the reincarnation of the Panchen Lama, right? They have their own named reincarnation and the real reincarnation. And so having that religious legitimacy, despite them, wanting no religious activities in China, is much needed for the stability aspect. So to me, it seems like it worked in 2015. Shi Yongxin became loyal to Xi Jinping instead and started to sing all of the praises for Xi's projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as becoming the soft power export for Xi Jinping. Because you gotta remember, Shaolin Temple and Confucius Institute, they were like one martial art and one cultural art export from China, with obviously a huge benefit to the United Front and soft power infiltration, right? Xi went along with the Belt and Road Initiative. There was multiple mentions of Shaolin in these overseas investments of infrastructures. He was building temples in Australia, and the state media was praising him for doing that, right? They were like, oh yeah, put all your business overseas, because he was useful. So he was essentially protected through 2015 until this year. So 2025 rolls around, suddenly things changed. What happened? Well, we've been talking about this. Xi Jinping has lost power. There's no backing of the abbot anymore. And remember, the authorities said that this was not because of financial reasons or whatever personal life stuff that he was going through. This was a political arrest. And this was one where we clearly see that the backing of the abbot, which is Xi Jinping now, has lost its power. Here's another detail I found. So on May 19th, Xi Jinping went to Luoyang to visit, which is a town in the same province as the Shaolin Temple. And then on the next day, he disappeared for 2 weeks. There were a lot of rumors flying around as to what he did. Some of them speculated that he went to a different temple with his mother, and he was seeking blessings for himself as well. The temple he went to was called White Horse Temple, and the abbot there, his name is Shi Yinle, and he was appointed by the Henan Buddhist Association, which at the time was led by Shi Yongxin. And that's exactly the same time as the Chinese authorities moved in to investigate the Shaolin Temple. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. But everything in China, power, in this case religion or the money, everything moves together for corruption, for power, for everything else. And that's exactly what this case is about. It's when you rise and when you fall together. And that's where we see things go. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and like this video if you haven't already. And also check out the red sea cucumber gel. Link is in the description. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.